What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Revit Tools video. This is part 2 of the array tool. In this video we'll be going over how to use the array tool in families. So I've got a basic auditorium layout here, and we're going to make some rivets that we want to array across this elevation. So I'll go into this elevation. Right now it's blank, but I'm going to make the rivet family now. I'll go to File, New, Family, and I'll just choose a generic model to start with, but I could go with a wall base because I'm going to put this on the wall. I could go with a basic generic model, or I could go with a face base, which I will do in this case because you could end up putting this family anywhere. It's a little more versatile in my mind. So generic model, face base, hit open. And something to note with the face base, because I'm going to have a rivet that's penetrating the wall in this case, or whatever surface it might be, this element is going to serve as the wall or whatever I might penetrate. So I'm going to draw the rivet pushing through that element right there. So I'm going to quickly model this rivet. I'll go create an extrusion. That'll work. I'll make another extrusion. And finally a third extrusion. And now I'll go into front elevation, and I will begin to set these to the correct elevation. I will now draw some reference planes in to help guide me. Reference plane there. So now I just want to align some of these different elements to properly model this rivet. Align that. Make another reference plane here. Align that. Lock it. Then I'll create another reference plane. And I will lock that. And I will create another reference plane. Lock that. And I'll align this portion to the reference plane, the level. Lock that there. Of course, this looks kind of funky right now, but we're going to add some dimensions to clean this up. I'm not going to bother with adding parameters to all these different elements. You could take that farther if you needed this specific rivet to be editable within the project. I don't have a real reason to do that at this point for this video, so I'm not going to do that, but just know that you could change all of these into separate parameters that you could edit in the project. So let's make this there, make this 1/8 of an inch, and then we'll make this 1/4 of an inch. Now we can do it a half just so we can see it a little better. Now let's go into 3D and see what we've got. There's a basic rivet. I'll put on thin lines so we can see it a little better. I'll join this together so it makes a little more sense. It's a pretty simple family. There's not a lot going on here. So at this point, we haven't arrayed anything. We've only made this rivet. So what I'm going to do now is I need to save this. I'm going to save this as family, of course. We'll call it Rivet. I'll hit save. And now what we want to do seems kind of counterintuitive, but we're ultimately going to make a nested family. So I'll do File, New Family, go back down to Generic Model Face Based, hit Open, I'll go back to this project, or this Revit family, sorry, and I will load that into that new family. I will hit OK, and now I have the option to use this Rivet family inside this new family, so therefore it's a nested family. I'm going to go to my front elevation, and to place an element that's loaded into this family, you can see that it's loaded in here. If I go to families, generic models, there's the Rivet. I can load it in from here, or I can go to component and it will show up in the components. So just like before, this is face based, so I can place it on any face that I want. I actually want to place the Rivet on the reference level. So back to component. Instead of placing on vertical face, I will place on face. So now this works anywhere. I'll just throw it in the middle right there, and now I will align this to the center. And you can see now that we have this as its own family, we get reference planes that help us align, which is exactly what we need in this case for arraying. So I can align that way, and then align that way, lock it. So now this is in the center. So right now I'm going to go ahead and save this family as another Revit family. And I'll do this Rivet Array Horizontal. And I hit save. So at this point we're finally now able to array this. Because this is its own element, its own family, its own everything, it's now going to be arrayed, and I can array this easily. I don't have to array specific parts, pieces of it. I can do the whole thing all at once. So I can select them, and I can go to array, and I'll choose linear, and let's put it at second. I don't need to worry about constraining it, but let's put it 6 inches apart. And because we're building the family, I typically like to do at least 3 so we could see this. So now we've got the array set up, and I could load this into the project, and we'll just have a Rivet array that has 3 elements in it. That doesn't quite help me because I want to control how many elements there are in the Revit project as opposed to coming into the family and having to edit it here. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to select this array, or I'm going to select this object, select this array there, and I'm going to go to label and add parameter. So what this is going to do is going to allow me to manipulate this array within a Revit project opposed to the family. I'll make this an instance, so if we have multiple instances of this, we could do different types of arrays. And I'm going to name this parameter horizontal. You could name it whatever you want. I would also group this differently because this is something you want to specifically manipulate. I might choose dimensions or data. It doesn't really matter in the end, it's just how Revit sorts things. But I'll put it in dimensions. I'll hit OK, and now you can see I've got horizontal 3 showing up. It is now an instance parameter. So I'm going to save this project. But before I load this into my Revit project or anything else, there's a couple things we need to do. Because depending on how this arrays, the arrays can kind of get out of whack. If you've tried to do some arrays and families and they weren't quite set up properly with alignments and locking to certain reference planes, you could get some arrays that end up shooting off in a diagonal direction or like basically an undesired direction. So to ensure that we have these rivets going horizontally in this direction only, what we need to do is align the first and last group or instance of this array to the reference plane that we want to lock it to. In this case, I want this to go horizontally, so I'm going to lock this end element right there. And another way to ensure that we have control over this distance in the project, in the Revit project, is to create another reference line. And I'll set the dimension there, and I'll create a parameter. I'll select the dimension, I'll create a parameter, I'll make this an instance, and I will do horizontal length. Dimensions works, instance parameter, great. So now what I can do is, this is going to be the driving force to the dimension between each of the elements. So now what I'm going to do is I will align and lock this second element to this distance. And I'll lock that there. You can see now I have the same distance. Now let me set this back to our 6 inches. We've got that saved. That works perfectly. So now in the project environment, I'm going to have control over the distance between the elements as an instance parameter, as well as the number, as you can see there in the array. So now this is good to go, but I want to take this one step farther. I just saved it, and because I went horizontal this way, let's go vertical. So in a sense, what we're going to do is the exact same thing we just did, but with this new family. Again, we're going to nest this together. We're going to file, create new family. I'm going to create a generic face-based family. And I'm going to save this as I'll do Rivet array vertical, and I'll save that. And now I'm going to go back to my horizontal array, and I'm going to load this into my vertical array. Maybe things are starting to make a little more sense for you. I sure hope so. And I'll place this horizontal element on face. So now again, I can work with this just about anywhere. I'll place it there, and now I'm going to align this to the same center point that I was working with previously. There. And see, this is what I'm talking about. I must have messed up, and I'm glad I messed this up for video's sake and for teaching's sake. So now you can see that my distance is off. If I go into, see the horizontal length there, that's not the 6 inches that I set. And that's particularly because now I need to nest not only the family within the family, but I need to nest the parameters within the new parameters of this family. And that'll make more sense. So this box here, I need to basically create the same parameter within this family that's going to use the information from the nested family that I previously made. So this is horizontal length. I'm going to make a new parameter, make it an instance parameter. I'm also going to call it horizontal length. Hit OK. There we go. And so now I'll do the same thing. If I click on the family, I'm going to do the same thing for the horizontal, which is the number. And you can name these differently, but so I'm consistent. I'm going to name them the same so there's not any confusion. Let me put this in dimensions. I'll hit OK. So now those parameters are controllable within the parameters of this particular family. So now I can change this to my 6 inches. Hit OK. There we go. Now I also want to align it to this point there, and you can see because all of these are associated into one family, I get this reference plane that runs the entire length of the family, which is perfect. And I know it's working that way. And I'll lock that there, and I know now I've got all of these elements working together, aligned and locked to the center point. So once again, we're going to array. We're going to array vertically this time. So now maybe I want that to be, again, the same 6 inches. I'm going to use 3. And what I'm going to do at this point is select the array, go to label. I could also use the same number if you wanted this to be a square and a consistent square depending on the number of horizontal, would be equal to the vertical. And so if I chose this parameter, if I set that parameter to 4, I'd have 4 horizontal and 4 vertical. But in this case, I want to have a little more flexibility. So I will add a parameter so I can change things vertically. So let's do vertical length. Or I'll just call it vertical. This is not the length. Put it at dimensions again, instance parameter, okay. Vertical 3. That's great. So now, just like I did in the last family, I'll go and create a reference plane, and I will align that second row to that reference plane. I will create a parameter from there, select the dimension, create a parameter, and now this is going to be our vertical length. I'll make it an instance, again dimensions, hit OK, and now I have the opportunity to set this to 6 inches like I had before. And again, to make sure that we do not have families floating off into space, I'm going to make sure to align this last set of arrays to that point there. And let's test some things out. I'll change this to 9 inches. It works just the same. So now I feel pretty good about it. So when it comes into the Revit project, you're going to see this. And you'll also have all the parameters that we created and nested through the nested families to adjust. So now I feel pretty good about this. We'll see if we messed up anywhere, and that would be revealed within the project. So now let's load this into the project. I'm in my elevation view right here, and now you can see that I have these rivets, and I can paste them on the wall based on placing on the face. So I'll just put them right there, and if we zoom in, we select the rivets, we can see we have all of our parameters here at the left that I was creating in the nested families, and I can change them at will. This is the big test. If it works, then we know we're pretty good. So I'll change this to 6. You can see my array increases by 6, increases horizontally to 6, vertically maybe I want 9. It works that way as well. Maybe I want my distance horizontally to be 1 foot. That works as well. We can put some dimensions out here to show that these things are in fact working and that we can see them update in real time. One thing we can do to get those reference planes to work on the vertical axis, we can go back into the family, go to the reference level, and now I'm going to draw another reference plane. I'll draw it vertically here, and I will add a parameter, but I'm going to add a parameter that we already have because we know we want this vertical length there. So what I can do is I can select this dimension and I can choose horizontal length, and that's going to give us our reference plane at that point there. So I'll load this into the project, I'll hit save, yes. I'll overwrite. And now if I go in dimension, I've got a vertical and a vertical. Perfect. So now we can see that this perfectly aligns with our lengths there. If I change this to 1.5 feet, you can see that I've got 1.5 feet. Same if I make this 24. You can get as crazy as you want with this, which is really nice. That'll do it for the array tool part 2. If you need to see part 1, I just covered the basic array tool in Revit projects. But that'll do it. If you did learn something and you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. It certainly helps. And if you want to see more videos like this one, definitely hit subscribe. There's always more to come. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.